Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. Black Box Research is here to share with you the highly anticipated findings from our 2021 ASEAN Business Outlook Survey. Most of you would be familiar with this survey as this is the 19th year AmCham is running this study. But for those who are new to this is AmCham's flagship study to better understand the US business sentiment in Southeast Asia. So you may ask, why Black Box? Black Box is a leading independent research agency in Asia Pacific. We provide our clients with decision science solutions and offer community-wide perspectives on contemporary problems and challenges. Now, we have been doing this for the past 20 years and are very excited to be here today to provide key insights that I trust all of you will find meaningful. My name is Monica and I am a director at Black Box, and I'll be taking you through the results in the next few slides. I'm sure this is not the first time all of you are hearing this, but I'm going to say it anyway. 2020 has been a year unlike any other. So naturally, this year's ASEAN Business Outlook Survey is also unlike any done in previous years. This year, we are focusing on the impact of COVID-19 and have gathered insights into the opportunity and challenges facing American companies and foreign enterprises in the region. And to do that, we conducted an online survey in December 2020 that reached out to small, medium, and large businesses in ASEAN across a range of industries. We couldn't have done this without the support of the various AmCham offices in the region. In today's session, I will be covering 4 key sections: the impact of COVID-19, the economic outlook, satisfaction with the local business climate, and finally, business expansion plans in ASEAN. Just a quick note before we begin, this report is designed to provide insights for the overall ASEAN region. So let's start with our first section. First up is the impact of COVID-19 on the current and near-term business outlook. Nearly 8 in 10 firms have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. So what does this mean? COVID-19 has truly reshaped the challenges businesses are facing. Uncertainty in consumer demand, coupled with government measures restricting cross-border trade and travel, are some of the challenges that could have severely impacted the regional businesses. Of those 80% that have been negatively impacted, a third of them have been severely impacted by the pandemic. If you're keen to find out more how COVID-19 has impacted travel, I would point you to a recent study conducted by Black Box, Unravel Travel, that examines the sentiment, preferences, and expectations of over 10,000 consumers across 17 countries regarding travel in a post-COVID world. There is a link in the last page for you to know more. Now, let's take a look at the impact of COVID-19 on local business operations. The impact locally has been even more severe, with nearly 9 in 10 reporting to be negatively impacted by the pandemic. An exception to this is Singapore, where only 13% of the businesses were severely impacted. This was primarily because of the proactive measures and the extensive budget set aside by the government to help businesses tide over the pandemic. Moving on, we see that as the pandemic continues to dominate economic sentiment, many businesses are facing challenges as they tread uncharted waters trying to navigate the impact of this global pandemic. 2 key challenges that businesses face are the reduction in demand and the disruption in supply chain. So what does this mean for businesses? This indicates that businesses are at a critical point where they must rethink and transform their supply chain and reconfigure their business to survive in a changed world. Take, for example, Thailand. In one of our recent studies titled Into the Light, we found that the demand for e-commerce in Thailand is surging due to the pandemic. If you want to know more about the impact of COVID-19 on consumers across ASEAN's key markets, feel free to scan the link on the last page to download a copy of the report. Now, continuing on, we look at how profits from the ASEAN region were impacted in 2020 as compared to the previous years. We see that nearly half of all member firms reported a drop in profits in 2020. This is in line with what businesses worldwide are experiencing due to the pandemic. In terms of recovery, we anticipate that this won't come for most countries until 2022. Hence, businesses must brace themselves for a tough year ahead. This sentiment is further shared by many of the member firms we surveyed. Over half are anticipating the impact of the pandemic to continue taking a toll on their revenue in 2021. Having said that, there is a silver lining. Quarter of the businesses reported that COVID-19 in fact had an unexpected positive impact on their business. As vaccines are rolled out globally and countries embark on the road to recovery, businesses need to establish As vaccines are rolled out globally and countries embark on the road to recovery, businesses need to start preparing for the new reality and establish critical priorities for 2021 as they shift from crisis response to recovery. And this brings us to the end of our first section, where we explored the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in ASEAN. We move on to our second section, where we take stock of sentiments towards ASEAN's role in revenue generation and business development. We asked member firms to rate the importance of ASEAN's contribution to their company's global revenues in the next 2 years. 42% indicated that ASEAN will become more important. However, an increasing number of companies expect ASEAN's contribution to remain at the same level over the next 2 years. This signals an opportunity to refresh ASEAN's value proposition and to make it more lucrative to encourage increased investment opportunities. We already know that ASEAN is one of the largest regional economies, and as its economies unify further, it is likely to drive the next phase of globalization. Now let's take a closer look at the 42% member firms that envision an increase in ASEAN's near-term contribution to revenues. The key reasons stated are the expected rise in consumer class, improved regional integration, and competitive production costs. These drivers can be leveraged to broaden the investment potential in the region. While not all companies expect revenues from ASEAN to increase in the next 2 years, most believe that the region will continue to be economically attractive over the next 5 years. Similar to what we found in the previous years, 76% of the member companies expect to increase their trade activities and investments in the region. Singapore is especially optimistic, with 90% projecting increased regional investment. All of these are encouraging signs that highlight the trade bloc's long-term viability. And with this, we come to the end of our section 2, where we analyze ASEAN's economic outlook. And we move to our third section, which looks at how satisfied the member companies are with the economic factors influencing their business environment. When considering measures to tackle COVID-19, majority of the businesses were satisfied with how their government had responded towards the pandemic. However, when it came to evaluating government's response to supporting affected businesses, we saw a lower level of satisfaction. Overall, Singapore appears to have the best COVID-19 response in the region. While Singapore's COVID response playbook cannot be easily replicated, there is scope to enable sharing of best practices to enhance effective pandemic response measures across the region. As we continue on, we move our lens towards wider economic factors. As you can see on the left, satisfaction levels run higher than in 2019 for a number of areas. What is encouraging is that 3 in 4 businesses in ASEAN reported increasingly positive sentiments towards the US despite facing significant disruptions in 2020. This signals an opportunity for AmCham to boost ties in the region, increase trade and investment, and strengthen overall relations. On the other hand, it is important to review areas that suffered in perception in 2020. Areas such as tax, corruption, and property costs. And with that, we come to the end of our section 3, and we move on to our last and final section, where we look at business expansion trends and opportunities within ASEAN and beyond. For most of 2020, it appeared as though the world had come to a grinding halt, with lockdowns, travel bans, and massive disruptions to day-to-day activities. So it is no surprise that most businesses are putting their local expansion plans on hold. While in 2019, majority of the businesses were planning to expand, this has changed last year, and businesses are now looking at maintaining their current capacity. But there is still optimism. 4 in 10 businesses are planning to scale up, and only 4 are planning to scale back. Even though it may be challenging, we see that businesses are still keen to forge ahead and determined to overcome the roadblocks set by the pandemic. As we move along, we identified the driving forces behind companies looking to expand their businesses. On this slide, you will see the key enabler at 47% is the availability of trained personnel and efficient manpower. Increased domestic demand and pro-business regulation were some of the other key reasons cited. Now let's take a closer look at the overseas expansion plans for APAC. Here we see that 73% of the businesses are planning to expand overseas in the next 5 years, and that Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia are the leading investment destinations. Many of these ASEAN countries offer an attractive investment environment backed by its young, skilled labor force and a thriving economy which has been driving urbanization and rapid development of infrastructure. We asked companies what were some of the developments that influenced their decision to expand within APAC. The top reasons given were rising demand and the technological advancement in the region. According to a report conducted by Google and its partners, the region's internet economy in 2019 was valued at $100 billion, and this is expected to triple by 2025, with Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam likely to be the key drivers of this growth. Another interesting point to note here is the importance gained by the Free Trade Agreement CPTPP over the last year, highlighting its utility in encouraging investments. With that, I have come to the end of my last section. And before I conclude this session, let me recap the key findings and leave you with some questions to think about. COVID-19 has had an unprecedented impact on businesses in the region. Some countries and businesses have been hit harder than others. So what can businesses do to recover and get back on track? While companies are expecting lower revenue contribution from ASEAN, the region continues to be an important and attractive destination for investment and expansion. So how can businesses leverage the different nuances and characteristics of each market to ensure they are capturing the opportunities? These are just some things to think about from our findings as businesses chart their way forward in a post-pandemic world. And with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. I hope the insights that Black Box has provided have set you thinking. If you have any questions or if you would like to work with us, please feel free to get in touch with us. The details are on the slide. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.